The massive space station turned slowly in the void between stars. Proxima Station was neutral ground, a place where different alien races could meet without fear. Inside the main meeting hall, beings from across the galaxy gathered around a circular table that seemed to float in the air. Ambassador Hyun Woo sat in his chair, trying not to show how nervous he felt. He was the only human in a room full of aliens. His dark suit looked plain next to the strange forms around him. To his left sat a creature made of living crystal that sparkled with inner light. This was Commander Veltar of the Vorthak race. The crystals in his body chimed softly when he moved. Across from Hyun Woo floated a being of pure energy. Captain Jen Aria of the Luminari had no solid form. She was just organized light and electricity held together by technology Hyun Woo could not understand. When she spoke, her voice came from speakers built into the table. The third alien was perhaps the strangest. General Clixoth of the Chithari looked like a giant insect. His 6 arms moved independently as he sorted through data tablets. His compound eyes reflected the room's light in rainbow patterns. When he clicked his mandibles together, it sounded like 2 stones hitting each other. "We are here to discuss Earth's request," said Veltar. His voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Humans want to join the Galactic Defense Coalition's special forces. But we must ask, what can humans offer that we do not already have?" Hyun Woo cleared his throat. He had practiced this speech many times. "My people have survived on Earth for thousands of years. We have learned to adapt to any environment. We can hide from enemies and move without being seen. These skills could help the coalition." Captain Janaria's light flickered brighter. "Hiding? We have technology that can make ships invisible to any sensor. We have armor that bends light around the wearer. What primitive methods could humans possibly know that we do not?" The insect general clicked his mandibles. "My race has eyes that can see in 12 different spectrums of light. We can detect the heat of a living body from 50 kilometers away. No organic being has ever hidden from Chithari sensors." Hyun Woo felt sweat on his forehead, but he kept his voice steady. "Perhaps we could demonstrate? A test of some kind?" Veltar's crystals chimed louder, which Hyun Woo had learned meant the alien was interested. "A test? What kind of test?" "Let one of our soldiers try to infiltrate a location while your best sensors track him. If he succeeds, then you will know that humans have something valuable to offer." The 3 aliens looked at each other. Well, Hyun Woo assumed they were looking at each other. It was hard to tell with beings so different from humans. "This could be entertaining," said Jen Aria. Her light pulsed in what might have been amusement. "Very well. We will set up a testing ground on the forest moon below this station. We will use our most advanced detection equipment." General Clixoth rubbed his front legs together. "I will bring quantum sensors that can detect the movement of individual atoms. No living thing has ever avoided detection by Chithari military technology. And I will provide thermal imaging systems that can track body heat through solid rock," added Veltar, "plus biosignature scanners that can identify specific DNA patterns from orbit." Hyun Woo nodded, though inside he wondered if he had just made a terrible mistake. The aliens' technology was beyond anything Earth possessed. How could any human soldier compete against such advanced systems? "What will be the objective of this test?" he asked. Veltar gestured to a holographic display that appeared above the table. It showed a forested area with a small building in the center. Your soldier must infiltrate this research station and retrieve a data crystal from the main computer. The station will be surrounded by our sensor grid. If he is detected at any point, the test fails. How long does he have? Asked Hyun-woo. From sunrise to sunset on the moon below, said Janaria. 12 standard hours should be more than enough time for any competent infiltrator. General Clicksoth leaned forward on his 6 legs. Of course, this assumes your soldier can even approach the station without being detected. Our sensors will track any movement larger than a small insect within a 50-kilometer radius. The alien seemed very confident. Too confident, perhaps. Hyun-woo had learned in his diplomatic career that overconfidence could be a weakness. We accept your test, he said. But I have one request. Our soldier should be allowed to study the area for 1 day before the test begins. This is only fair. The aliens exchanged what might have been glances again. Finally, Veltar nodded. Agreed. Your soldier may observe the testing ground for 24 hours before the infiltration attempt begins. When will this test take place? Asked Hyun-woo. In 3 days, said Janaria. That will give us time to set up our sensor grid and calibrate all systems. We want to give your human every possible advantage. Hyun-woo almost smiled at that. The aliens thought they were being generous, but they had no idea what they were up against. Very well, I will contact Earth and arrange for our best reconnaissance specialist to come here. As the meeting ended, the aliens chatted among themselves in their strange languages. Hyun-woo caught fragments of their conversation through his translation device. They were already planning how to study human biology when their sensors detected the infiltrator. They spoke about learning from human failure, but Hyun-woo was thinking about something else entirely. He was thinking about a conversation he had had with Earth's military leaders before coming to this station. They had told him about soldiers who could disappear in plain sight using nothing but mud and leaves. They had described techniques passed down through generations of warriors who had learned to become one with their environment. The aliens had impressive technology, but they thought like beings who had always depended on machines. They could not imagine that sometimes the oldest methods were still the best methods. As Hyun-woo left the meeting room, he activated his communication device to contact Earth. Captain Lee Do-hyun was about to receive the most important mission of his career. And 3 very confident alien races were about to learn something new about human ingenuity. The test would begin in 3 days. Hyun-woo had a feeling it would be very educational for everyone involved. Captain Lee Do-hyun stood in the shuttle bay of the Earth Defense Force ship Harmony, reading the mission briefing for the 3rd time. The words on the screen seemed almost impossible to believe. Infiltrate an alien research station while being hunted by the most advanced sensor technology in the galaxy. The stakes could not be higher. Earth's acceptance into the Galactic Defense Coalition depended on his success. Do-hyun was not a tall man, but he moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years learning to be invisible. His dark hair was cut short in military style, and his brown eyes missed nothing as they scanned the technical details of the alien sensors he would face. Sir? Sergeant Kim Tae-min appeared beside him. Tae-min was Do-hyun's second in command, a stocky man with quick hands and quicker thinking. The shuttle is ready to take you to Proxima Station. Do-hyun nodded and closed the briefing file. Any word from intelligence about what we are facing? Dr. Yoon-ji sent a report, said Tae-min. He handed Do-hyun a datapad. She has been studying with the aliens for 6 months. Her analysis of their technology is concerning. Du Hyun read through Dr. Yunji's report as they walked toward the shuttle. She was a xenobiologist who had been selected to study alien life forms as part of Earth's first cultural exchange program. Her scientific mind had been working on the problem of alien sensors since Ambassador Hyun-woo had contacted Earth about the test. According to her report, the Vorthak quantum sensors could detect disturbances in space-time caused by the presence of matter. The Chitauri biosignature scanners could identify specific genetic markers from incredible distances. The luminary thermal systems could track heat signatures through almost any material. She sounds worried, said Do-hyun. Very worried. Sir, agreed Tae-min. She thinks the aliens' technology is too advanced for conventional infiltration methods. Do-hyun stopped walking and turned to face his sergeant. Tae-min, how long have we worked together? 8 years, sir. And in all that time, when have I ever used conventional methods? Tae-min's serious expression cracked into a small smile. Never, sir. That is why they call you the Ghost. The Ghost. Do-hyun had earned that nickname during the border conflicts on Europa. He had spent 3 weeks behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence while hostile forces searched for him with thermal scanners and motion detectors. They never found him, even though he had been living in their own supply depot for the last week of the mission. The shuttle flight to Proxima Station took 6 hours. Do-hyun spent the time reviewing everything Earth's scientists knew about the 3 alien races. The Vorthak had evolved on a world of living crystal. They thought in terms of resonance and harmonic frequencies. The Chitauri came from a planet where survival meant constant awareness of predators and prey. Their senses were impossibly sharp, but they relied on them completely. The Luminari were the most mysterious. As beings of pure energy, they perceived the universe differently than organic life forms. Their sensors were designed to detect the electromagnetic signatures that all living things produced. When the shuttle docked at Proxima Station, Do-hyun was met by Corporal Park Ji-won from the embassy security detail. Ji-won was a small woman with alert eyes who had been trained in diplomatic protection. "Captain," she said with a salute, "Ambassador Hyun-woo is waiting for you in the briefing room." As they walked through the station's corridors, Do-hyun noticed how different species moved and interacted. The Vorthak glided smoothly, their crystal bodies chiming softly. The Chitauri skittered on their 6 legs, their compound eyes constantly moving. Other races he did not recognize hurried past on various errands. Ambassador Hyun-woo looked tired when Do-hyun entered the briefing room. The older man had been carrying the weight of Earth's future on his shoulders for months. "Captain," said Hyun-woo, rising from his chair, "thank you for coming. I hope you understand what we are asking of you." "I understand, sir," replied Do-hyun, "but I have questions about the test parameters." Lieutenant Choi Min-ho, the embassy's military attaché, activated a holographic display. "The aliens have set up their sensor grid on Forest Moon 7. The target is a research station in the center of a 50-kilometer protected zone." Do-hyun studied the 3-dimensional map that appeared in the air. The forest looked dense, with numerous streams and rocky outcroppings. The research station was a simple rectangular building with a single entrance. "What kind of data crystal am I retrieving?" asked Do-hyun. "It does not matter," said Hyun-woo. "The crystal is just an objective to prove you reached the target. The real test is whether you can move through their sensor grid undetected." "Sir," said Ji-won hesitantly, "the aliens have offered to let us provide tactical support. Perhaps a team approach would be better?" Do-hyun shook his head. No, they want to test human capabilities, not human teamwork. This has to be a solo mission. Minho pulled up technical specifications for the alien sensors. Dr. Yoonji will brief you on what each sensor system can detect. But Captain, I have to say, this seems impossible. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Do-hyun smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. Lieutenant, you are thinking like an engineer. These sensors are designed to detect advanced technology. Stealth fields, electronic countermeasures, sophisticated camouflage systems. But what if I do not use any technology at all? The room fell silent. Hyunwoo leaned forward in his chair. What do you mean? I mean that sometimes the oldest methods are still the best methods, said Do-hyun. These aliens have never fought humans before. They do not know how human soldiers learned to hide from each other long before we had any advanced technology. Min-ho looked confused. You are talking about primitive camouflage? Mud and leaves? I am talking about understanding the environment and becoming part of it, said Do-hyun. Their sensors are looking for technology. They are looking for energy signatures and artificial materials. But what if there is nothing artificial to detect? Ji-won's eyes widened as she began to understand. You are going to hide in plain sight. I am going to become invisible by not trying to be invisible, said Do-hyun. Their sensors will see exactly what is there: forest, mud, vegetation, nothing that registers as a threat or an infiltrator. Hyunwoo stood up and walked to the window, overlooking the forest moon below. Captain, you realize that if this fails, Earth's chance to join the coalition may be lost forever. Do-hyun joined him at the window. Far below, he could see the green canopy of an alien forest. Somewhere in that wilderness, the most advanced sensor technology in the galaxy was waiting for him. Sir, he said quietly, I have been hiding from enemies my entire career. The technology changes, but the principles remain the same: patience, observation, and understanding your environment. These aliens may have incredible sensors, but they have never hunted a human who knows how to truly disappear. The forest moon's surface was more beautiful than Do-hyun had expected. Tall trees with purple leaves stretched toward the pale sky, and streams of crystal-clear water wound between moss-covered rocks. The air smelled of growing things and rich earth. It reminded him of the mountains back on Earth where he had learned his first lessons in fieldcraft. Do-hyun stood at the edge of the sensor perimeter, studying the terrain through binoculars. 5 kilometers away, he could see the research station, a simple gray building that looked out of place among the natural beauty. Between him and the target, sensors were hidden throughout the forest. He could not see them, but he knew they were there. Behind him, the alien observation post buzzed with activity. Commander Veltar supervised the installation of his quantum detection array, while General Clixoth calibrated biosignature scanners that could supposedly track a mouse from orbit. Captain Janaria floated between monitoring stations, her energy form pulsing with what might have been excitement. The human is just standing there, observed Science Officer Crethon of the Luminary. His voice carried clearly across the observation area. Is this some kind of meditation ritual? Dr. Yoonji translated the comment for Lieutenant Choi Min-ho, who watched from the human observation post. Min-ho activated his communication device to contact Do-hyun. Captain, the aliens are wondering why you are not moving. Do-hyun's voice came back calm and steady. Tell them I am reading the terrain. Every good hunter studies his prey before making a move. Min-ho relayed the message. The aliens found this amusing. To them, the prey was obviously Do-hyun himself, and they were the hunters with superior technology. Do-hyun spent the first hour walking the perimeter of the sensor grid. He was careful to stay outside the detection zone, but he wanted to understand the lay of the land. He noted where streams entered and left the forest, where the ground was rocky or soft, where the canopy was thick or thin. The aliens watched with growing confusion as Do-hyun knelt beside a stream and examined the mud on its banks. He scooped up a handful and let it run through his fingers, testing its texture and consistency. Then he moved to a patch of vegetation and carefully studied different types of plants. "What is he doing now?" asked sensor technician Volkan of the Chithari. His compound eyes tracked Do-hyun's every movement. "He appears to be collecting samples," said Krethon uncertainly. "Perhaps humans perform chemical analysis with their primitive senses?" Do-hyun had indeed begun collecting things, but not for chemical analysis. He gathered several types of local plants, noting which ones would hold their shape when crushed and which ones produced natural dyes. He found clay deposits along the stream banks and tested how they mixed with water and organic matter. Dr. Yunji watched from the human observation post with growing understanding. As a xenobiologist, she recognized field research when she saw it. But this was not scientific study. This was a predator learning to become part of his environment. "Lieutenant," she said to Min-ho, "I think I understand what the captain is doing." "What do you mean?" "He is not preparing to hide from the censors," she explained. "He is preparing to become something the censors will not recognize as a threat." Back in the forest, Do-hyun continued his preparations. He found a fallen log that had been colonized by a particular type of moss. The moss had an interesting property. It retained moisture and could be shaped like clay. He carefully harvested some of this moss and added it to his growing collection of materials. The aliens' confusion only deepened as Do-hyun began what looked like arts and crafts activities. He mixed mud with plant fibers, creating a paste that dried to match the color of tree bark. He tested different combinations of clay and vegetation until he found mixtures that resembled various elements of the forest floor. "Is this some kind of human ritual?" wondered Commander Veltar. "Are they summoning their primitive gods for protection?" General Clicksoth clicked his mandibles dismissively. "Whatever they are doing, it will not help them against Chithari sensors. Our bioscanners can detect genetic material at the molecular level." Do-hyun spent hours learning the patterns of local wildlife. He observed how small animals moved through the underbrush, noting their speeds and the sounds they made. He watched birds fly between the trees and studied how wind moved the vegetation. As the day wore on, the aliens began to lose interest in Do-hyun's activities. Their sensors were ready, their detection grids were calibrated, and their monitoring stations were fully operational. What could one human with mud and leaves possibly do against such sophisticated technology? But Dr. Yunji continued to watch, with growing fascination. She had studied biology long enough to recognize camouflage when she saw it, but this was camouflage at a level she had never imagined. Do-hyun was not just trying to look like part of the forest, he was learning to become part of it. Near sunset, Do-hyun finally began preparing his equipment. But instead of checking electronic devices or advanced gear, he began coating his clothing with the mud mixtures he had prepared. He attached pieces of local vegetation to his uniform, not randomly but in patterns that matched the natural growth he had observed. Lieutenant Min-ho activated his communicator. "Captain, the aliens are confident their sensors will track you. from the moment you enter the detection zone. Are you sure about this approach? Do Hyun's voice carried a note of quiet confidence. Minho, these sensors are designed to detect technology. They are calibrated to find energy signatures, artificial materials, and electronic emissions. But I am not going to give them any of those things to detect. What will you give them? Exactly what belongs in this forest. Mud, water, plant matter, and organic compounds moving at natural speeds in natural patterns. Their sensors will see a forest being a forest. Dr. Yoonji nodded approvingly as she listened to the conversation. He is not trying to fool the sensors, she explained to Minho. He is trying to make himself invisible by becoming exactly what the sensors expect to find. As night fell, Do-hyun made his final preparations. He had spent the entire day learning this alien forest as if he had been born in it. He knew which plants would provide the best cover, which streams would mask his thermal signature, and how to move in rhythm with the natural sounds of the wilderness. The aliens retired to their monitoring stations, confident that their technology would easily track any infiltration attempt. Their screens showed a peaceful forest with normal thermal patterns, expected biosignatures, and no artificial energy sources. Do-hyun settled down for a few hours of rest before dawn. Tomorrow would prove whether human ingenuity could triumph over alien technology. But as he lay on the forest floor, covered in mud and vegetation, he had already begun to disappear. Even his own people in the observation post were having trouble keeping track of exactly where he was. Dawn came quietly to the forest moon. The pale sun cast long shadows through the purple-leafed trees, and morning mist rose from the streams. In the alien observation post, sensor operators took their positions at monitoring stations that hummed. With advanced technology, Commander Veltar's quantum sensors could detect the movement of individual atoms. General Clixoth's biosignature scanners were calibrated to identify human genetic markers from 50 kilometers away. Captain Janaria's thermal imaging systems could track body heat through solid rock. All three alien species were confident that no organic being could avoid detection by their combined sensor grid. "Beginning test sequence," announced Science Officer Krethon. "All sensors are active and calibrated. Target area is fully monitored." Do-hyun lay motionless at the edge of the sensor perimeter, his body covered in mud and vegetation. He had spent the pre-dawn hours applying the final touches to his camouflage. Clay mixed with plant dyes covered his skin in patterns that matched the forest floor. Local moss and leaves were attached to his clothing in arrangements that mimicked natural growth. But his preparation went deeper than just visual camouflage. He had studied the thermal patterns of the forest, noting how sunlight and shade created temperature variations. He had observed the natural rhythms of wildlife movement. He had learned to breathe in sync with the wind moving through the trees. "Sensor grid shows normal forest activity," reported sensor technician Volkan. "Small animals, birds, natural thermal variations. No sign of the human infiltrator." Lieutenant Choi Minho watched from the human observation post, trying to spot Do-hyun through binoculars. Even knowing approximately where the captain was, he could barely make out a human shape among the vegetation. "There," whispered Dr. Yoonji, pointing toward a cluster of bushes near the stream. "I think I see movement." Minho adjusted his binoculars. "Where? I just see—" "Wait, did that bush just move?" Do-hyun began his infiltration with movements so slow they were almost imperceptible. He did not try to avoid the sensors. Instead, he moved in ways that the sensors would interpret as natural forest activity. When he crawled forward, He moved like water flowing downhill. When he shifted position, he swayed like vegetation in the breeze. The quantum sensors detected his presence immediately, but they registered him as organic matter moving according to natural physical laws. The biosignature scanners identified genetic material, but the readings were confused by the mud and plant matter covering his body. The thermal imaging showed heat signatures, but they matched the expected temperature patterns of sun-warmed earth and vegetation. Interesting readings on Grid 7, said Volkan, studying his displays. Higher than normal organic density, but within expected parameters for forest undergrowth. General Clicksoth looked over the technician's shoulder. Probably a deer or similar creature bedding down near the stream. Mark it for observation, but do not classify as a threat. Do-hyun had covered nearly 100 meters in the first hour, moving with the patience of a man who understood that speed was less important than invisibility. He followed a stream bed where his thermal signature would blend with the cool water. When he needed to cross open ground, he moved during moments when wind stirred the vegetation, masking any unnatural sounds. The aliens' sophisticated sensors continued to function perfectly, but they were seeing exactly what Do-hyun wanted them, to see a forest ecosystem behaving normally. "Status report," requested Commander Veltar. "All sensors operating at full efficiency," replied Krethon. "We have detected 17 small mammals, 43 birds, and numerous insects within the monitored area. No signs of the human infiltrator." "Are you certain he has begun the test?" asked Veltar. The aliens checked with the human observation post. Lieutenant Minho confirmed that Captain Do-hyun had entered the sensor grid over an hour ago and was proceeding toward the target. "Impossible," stated General Clicksoth. "Our sensors would detect any human-sized organism within the grid." "Perhaps their primitive methods are even less effective than we thought," suggested Janaria. "Maybe he is simply lost in the forest." But Dr. Yunji was beginning to understand the true brilliance of Do-hyun's approach. She watched the sensor displays over the alien's shoulders, noting how the readings changed as Do-hyun moved through. The grid. The sensors were working perfectly. They were just interpreting the data exactly as Do-hyun intended. "He is not hiding from your sensors," she said quietly to Minho. "He is making your sensors work for him." Do-hyun had reached the halfway point to his objective. 2.5 kilometers of alien sensor grid lay behind him, and not one alarm had been triggered. He paused in a grove of trees to rest and assess his progress. The thermal imaging showed his body heat, but it appeared as a sun-warmed patch of forest floor. The bioscanners detected his genetic material, but it was mixed with so much plant and soil matter that the readings looked like natural compost. The quantum sensors registered his movement, but he moved like flowing water and swaying vegetation. Grid 12, showing elevated organic activity, reported Volkan. Possible foraging behavior by medium-sized fauna. Classification, asked Clicksoth. Non-threatening forest wildlife. Probably feeding near the stream. Do-hyun smiled grimly as he prepared to continue his approach. The alien sensors were so sophisticated that they could detect everything, but their interpretation systems were designed for advanced threats. They had no protocols for recognizing a human who had become indistinguishable from the forest itself. As he moved deeper into the sensor grid, Do-hyun's confidence grew. Each step confirmed his theory that the most advanced technology could be defeated by the most basic techniques. The aliens were looking for stealth fields and electronic countermeasures. They were not looking for mud and leaves applied with the wisdom of 10,000 years of human warfare. "Approaching Grid 15, Volkan announced. "This puts us within 5 kilometers of the research station. All sensors remain clear of threats. Captain Gennaria's energy form flickered with what might have been concern. Perhaps we should increase sensor sensitivity. The sensors are already at maximum sensitivity, replied Crethon. If there was anything artificial in that forest, we would detect it instantly. That was exactly the problem, though none of the aliens realized it yet. There was nothing artificial for them to detect. Do-hyun had become a natural part of the forest ecosystem, moving through their sensor grid like a gentle breeze through the trees. The research station was now visible through the forest canopy, its gray walls stark against the natural colors of the wilderness. Do-hyun had successfully penetrated the most sophisticated sensor network in the galaxy using nothing more than mud, leaves, and the patient wisdom of human hunters who had learned. Their skills when technology meant a sharp stick and a keen eye. The real test, however, was just beginning. In the alien observation post, tension was beginning to replace confidence. 3 hours had passed since the test began, and the most advanced sensor technology in the galaxy had not detected a single sign of human infiltration. Chief Observer Thanemore of the Vorthak paced between monitoring stations, his crystal body chiming with agitation. "This is impossible. Our quantum sensors can detect a single photon displaced by matter. Where is this human?" Science Officer Crethon checked his readings for the 20th time. "Sir, all sensors are functioning within normal parameters. We are detecting standard forest activity, small animals, birds, natural thermal variations, but no human-sized organism has entered the monitored area. But the humans confirmed their soldier began the test 3 hours ago," insisted General Clix Oth. His compound eyes reflected the glow of multiple display screens. "Are you suggesting he never entered the sensor grid?" Sensor technician Volkan pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the detection area. "Sir, look at these readings from Grid 7. We detected elevated organic density at 347 hours. It moved along the stream bed for approximately 2 kilometers, then dispersed into the undergrowth." "Dispersed?" asked Captain Gennaria, her energy form flickering with confusion. "Organic matter does not simply disperse. What was the biosignature? Analysis?" "Complex mixture of plant matter, soil microorganisms, and trace genetic material, consistent with natural forest floor composition." Volkan's mandibles clicked nervously. Nothing that would indicate a human presence. Thanemore stopped pacing and focused all his attention on the sensor displays. "Show me thermal imaging for the past 3 hours." The screens filled with heat signature, maps of the forest. The images showed the normal patterns of a living ecosystem. Warm spots where sunlight penetrated the canopy, cool areas in the shade, the flowing lines of water through stream beds. Everything appeared exactly as it should. In a healthy forest. "There," said Clixoth, pointing to a section of the display. "Grid 12, timestamp 0412. That thermal signature is slightly warmer than the surrounding vegetation." Crethon enhanced the image. "Analysis indicates sun-warmed soil with elevated moisture content. Probably a natural spring or underground. Water source?" "But it moved," insisted Clixoth. "Look at the progression over time." They watched as the warm spot seemed to flow across the forest floor like water seeking its natural level. It followed terrain features, moved with the rhythm of wind patterns, and always remained within expected temperature ranges for natural phenomena. "Water runoff from morning condensation," concluded Volkan. "The thermal signature is consistent, with moisture moving downhill through organic matter." But General Clixoth was not satisfied. His species had evolved as hunters, and his instincts were telling him something was wrong. Recalibrate all bioscanners. Increase sensitivity to human genetic markers. Sir, the scanners are already operating beyond design specifications, warned Volkan. If we increase sensitivity further, we will start detecting every bacteria and virus in the forest. Do it anyway. The bioscanners hummed louder as their sensitivity increased. Immediately, the displays lit up with thousands of detections. Human genetic material was everywhere. Traces carried by water, wind, and wildlife from the observation posts at the perimeter of the forest. "This is useless," said Janaria. "We are detecting genetic contamination from the human observers. The entire area is saturated with trace DNA." Thanemore's frustration was growing. "What about quantum resonance? Can we track displaced space-time around a human-sized mass?" Crethon activated additional sensor arrays. "The quantum field is complex, sir. We are detecting numerous distortions consistent with organic matter moving through the forest. But all readings fall within expected parameters for natural wildlife activity." "Show me the largest distortions," ordered Thanemore. The display highlighted several areas where the quantum field showed significant displacement. But when they examined these locations more closely, the distortions appeared to be caused by large trees swaying in the wind, streams flowing over rocks, and the natural movements of the forest ecosystem. Meanwhile, Communications Officer Yoon Sujin sat in the human observation post, struggling to maintain her professional composure. She could hear every word of the aliens' increasingly frantic discussions through her translation device. Their confusion was growing by the minute, and she had to bite her lip to keep from smiling. "Status update from the human delegation," requested Thanemore. Sujin activated her communicator. "Our soldier is proceeding according to plan. He should reach the target within 2 hours." The alien observers exchanged glances that managed to convey bewilderment despite their vastly different facial structures. "Where is he?" demanded Clicksoth. "Our sensors cover every square meter of that forest. Nothing human-sized can move through that area without being detected." Dr. Yunji had been studying the sensor displays with growing fascination. As a xenobiologist, she understood both alien technology and natural camouflage better than most humans. "Your sensors are detecting him," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" asked Thanemore. "Captain Do-hyun is not avoiding your sensors. He is making himself invisible by giving your sensors exactly what they expect to find: natural forest activity." The aliens looked at her with expressions of disbelief. "Impossible," stated Crethon. "Our bioscanners can identify specific species from genetic analysis. Our thermal imaging can distinguish between organic and inorganic heat sources. Our quantum sensors can detect the unique space-time signature of any organized matter." "Yes," agreed Yunji. "But what if the organized matter you are trying to detect has reorganized itself to match the forest around it? What if the genetic material you are scanning is mixed with so much plant and soil matter that it appears to be part of the ecosystem? What if the thermal signature you are tracking matches the expected temperature of sun-warmed Earth?" The aliens fell silent as they considered this possibility. "You are suggesting," said Veltar slowly, "that this human has somehow made himself indistinguishable from the forest itself?" "Not made himself indistinguishable," corrected Yunji. "Made himself into part of the forest. Your sensors are working perfectly. They are telling you exactly what is there: forest floor, vegetation, natural thermal patterns, organic matter moving according to physical laws. The problem is not with your technology. The problem is with your assumptions about what you are looking for." Thanimer's crystal form brightened as understanding began to dawn. Our sensors are designed to detect artificial objects hiding in natural environments. But if the object is no longer artificial, then there is nothing for your sensors to distinguish from the background, finished Yunji. The realization sent shockwaves through the alien observation team. Their technology was not failing. It was being used against them by a human who understood that sometimes the most sophisticated systems could be defeated by the most basic techniques. "Impossible," whispered Clicksoth. "No organic being has ever avoided Chithari sensors." "Because no organic being has ever tried to become part of the environment instead of hiding from it," replied Yunji. As the implications sank in, the aliens began to understand that they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic military history. A single human, using nothing but mud and vegetation, had made himself invisible to sensor technology that could track cloaked starships across star systems. The test was far from over, but the aliens were already beginning to realize that their assumptions about primitive human capabilities might need serious revision. Do-hyun crouched motionless beside the research station, his mud-covered form blending perfectly with the shadows cast by the building's walls. After 6 hours of patient movement through the alien sensor grid, he had reached his objective without triggering a single alarm. The research station was smaller than it had appeared from a distance. A simple rectangular structure with smooth gray walls and a single entrance. Through a window, he could see the soft glow of computer displays and the data crystal that was his target. In the alien observation post, panic was beginning to set in. "Still no contact with the infiltrator," reported sensor technician Volkan, his compound eyes darting between multiple displays. "All sensors show normal forest activity, no signs of human presence anywhere in the monitored area." Field Marshal Kex Andra of the Vorthak Coalition forces had arrived an hour earlier to observe what should have been a simple demonstration of alien technological superiority. Instead, she was witnessing the impossible. "Run a complete system." "Diagnostic," she ordered. "Check every sensor, every calibration, every data connection." "Ma'am, we have run diagnostics 6 times in the past hour," replied Science Officer Crethon. "All systems are functioning perfectly. The sensors are detecting exactly what they should detect. A healthy forest ecosystem with normal wildlife activity." "Then where is the human?" demanded Kexandra. The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything the aliens believed about their technology. Their sensors could track individual molecules across vast distances. They could detect the quantum signatures of cloaked spacecraft. They could identify specific genetic markers in trace amounts of biological matter, but they could not find one human soldier. Do-hyun studied the research station's security systems through the window. The aliens had not bothered with sophisticated defenses. After all, their sensor grid was supposed to prevent anyone from reaching the building in the first place. The entrance was secured with a simple electronic lock that would have been considered primitive by Earth military standards. He moved closer to the building, keeping his movements slow and natural. The mud covering his body had dried to match the color of the station's walls. The vegetation attached to his clothing swayed gently in the breeze, making him appear to be nothing more than a patch of plant growth that had taken root near the building's foundation. "Thermal reading near the research station," announced Volkan suddenly. "Grid 23, adjacent to the building's north wall." Every alien in the observation post focused on the display. The thermal imaging showed a warm spot next to the research station, roughly human-sized. "Finally," breathed General Clicksoth. Magnify and analyze. The image zoomed in on the heat signature. It showed a patch of sun-warmed Earth with elevated moisture content, consistent with a natural depression where water might collect during rain. Analysis? Asked Kexandra. Surface temperature consistent with solar heating of damp soil, reported Crethon. No indication of biological heat generation, probably a drainage area or natural water collection point. But it was not there an hour ago, insisted Clicksalth. Vulcan checked the historical data. Correct, sir. But thermal patterns change throughout the day as the sun moves. This appears to be a natural result of changing light and shadow patterns around the building. Du Hyun had been listening to the aliens' communications through a small receiver Dr. Yunji had provided. Their translation devices worked both ways, allowing him to understand their growing confusion and frustration. He smiled grimly as he reached the research station's entrance. The aliens were so focused on their sophisticated sensors that they had forgotten the most basic principle of security. Sometimes you had to look with your own eyes. The electronic lock was indeed primitive by Earth standards. Do-hyun had it open in less than 30 seconds using tools that would not register on any sensor as artificial. Thin strips of metal salvaged from natural mineral deposits and shaped by hand. Motion detected inside the research station, announced an automated system. The alien observation post erupted in activity. Impossible, said Kexandra. How did anyone get inside? Our sensors show no infiltration. Could it be a malfunction in the building systems? Suggested Crethon. Check the internal security cameras, ordered Clicksoth. The cameras showed empty corridors and rooms. But as they watched, vegetation seemed to move slightly in one of the hallways, just a gentle swaying motion that might have been caused by air circulation. There, pointed Vulcan. That plant growth near the central computer, did it just move? They watched more carefully. The patch of vegetation did seem to be moving, but so slowly and naturally that it could easily be explained by air currents. From the building's ventilation system, Do-hyun had reached the central computer room. The data crystal sat in a transparent container on the main console, glowing softly with stored information. He moved toward it with the same patience he had shown throughout the infiltration, never making sudden movements that might trigger motion sensors. The container just opened, reported the building's automated systems. On the security cameras, the aliens could see the crystal's container slowly opening, but there was no sign of what had opened it. The cameras showed only the empty room with its patch of vegetation near the console. Sensor sweep of the computer room, ordered Kexandra desperately. All sensors focused on the interior of the research station. Bioscanners detected trace amounts of human genetic material, but the readings were consistent with contamination carried by air currents from the perimeter observation posts. Thermal imaging showed normal temperature patterns for an air-conditioned building. Quantum sensors detected no artificial technology or unusual mass concentrations. The data crystal is gone, announced the building systems. The aliens stared at their displays in stunned silence. According to their sensors, the research station was empty except for normal building materials and some vegetation that had somehow grown inside. But the data crystal had definitely been removed by someone or something. This is impossible, whispered Kexandra. Nothing can avoid our sensors. Nothing. Communications Officer Yoon Soo-jin could barely contain her amazement as she watched the aliens' growing bewilderment. Captain Do-hyun had not only infiltrated their sensor grid undetected, he had actually entered the research station and completed his objective while their cameras were watching. Perhaps, suggested Dr. Yoonji gently, Your sensors are working exactly as designed. Perhaps the problem is not with your technology, but with your understanding of what technology can and cannot detect. Do-hyun began his extraction from the research station, moving with the same patient care he had shown during the infiltration. He had the data crystal secured in a pouch made from woven plant fibers. Nothing that would register as artificial on any sensor. As he left the building, the motion detectors registered normal air movement. As he moved away from the structure, thermal imaging showed the gradual cooling of sun-warmed surfaces. As he disappeared back into the forest, the sensors detected nothing more than the gentle movement of vegetation in the breeze. The most advanced sensor technology in the galaxy continued to work perfectly, telling the aliens exactly what they were designed to detect: a natural forest ecosystem going about its normal business. But somewhere in that ecosystem, invisible to their technology, a human soldier was making his way back to the extraction point with proof that sometimes the oldest methods were still the most effective. The extraction point was a small clearing at the edge of the sensor grid, where a shuttle waited to take Do-hyun back to Proxima Station. Lieutenant Choi Min-ho and Dr. Eun-ji stood beside the shuttle, scanning the forest with binoculars and hoping to catch a glimpse of their returning hero. "There," whispered Eun-ji, pointing toward a section of undergrowth near the stream. "Something is moving differently than the rest of the vegetation." Min-ho adjusted his binoculars, but saw only forest. Plants swaying in the breeze, shadows shifting as clouds passed overhead, the normal rhythm of a living ecosystem. Then, gradually, he began to make out a human shape moving through the vegetation with impossible stealth. Do-hyun emerged from the forest like a piece of the wilderness coming to life. Mud covered every inch of his body, mixed with plant dyes that matched the colors of the forest floor. Vegetation was attached to his clothing in patterns that had fooled the most sophisticated sensors in the galaxy. He moved with the fluid grace of flowing water, each step perfectly timed to match the natural rhythms around him. "Captain," said Min-ho with obvious relief. "Mission accomplished?" Do-hyun reached into a pouch made from woven plant fibers and withdrew the data crystal. It glowed softly in the forest light, proof that he had successfully infiltrated the research station under the noses of 3 alien species. In the alien observation post, the moment of revelation was devastating. Field Marshal Kexandra watched through long-range cameras as the human soldier appeared at the extraction point. Her crystal form dimmed with what might have been shock or embarrassment. "That is impossible," she said quietly. "Our sensors never detected him. Not once in 8 hours of continuous monitoring." Science Officer Krethon was frantically reviewing sensor logs, trying to understand how their technology had failed so completely. "Ma'am, I have analyzed every data point from the past 8 hours. Our sensors functioned perfectly throughout the test period. They detected normal forest activity, appropriate thermal variations, and expected biosignatures for a healthy ecosystem. But they missed a human soldier moving 5 kilometers through our sensor grid," said General Clixoth. His compound eyes reflected the glow of displays that had failed to serve their purpose. Dr. Han Subin, Earth's military scientist, had been observing the test from the human delegation area. She activated her translation device and addressed the aliens directly. "Your sensors did not miss anything," she said calmly. "They detected exactly what was there. Forest floor moving like forest floor. Vegetation swaying like vegetation. Organic. Matter flowing like water and earth." Captain Janaria's energy form flickered with confusion. "But there was a human in that forest. Our cameras recorded him at the extraction point." Yes, agreed Subin. But for 8 hours, that human was not behaving like a human. He was behaving like part of the forest ecosystem. Your sensors are designed to detect artificial objects, technological signatures, and organized matter moving in unnatural ways. Captain Do-hyun gave you none of those things to detect. The aliens struggled to understand this concept. Their entire approach to stealth detection was based on finding artificial elements in natural environments, energy fields, synthetic materials, organized structures that did not belong. "Explain," requested Kexandra. Subin gestured toward Do-hyun, who was cleaning mud from his face at the extraction point. Human soldiers learned to hide from each other thousands of years before we developed advanced technology. We learned by watching animals, by understanding how predators and prey interact, by becoming part of the environment instead of fighting against it. "But your camouflage is so primitive," protested sensor technician Volkan. "Mud and vegetation. How can such simple methods defeat quantum sensors?" "Because your quantum sensors are designed to detect quantum technology," explained Subin. "Your bioscanners are calibrated to find artificial biological signatures. Your thermal imaging looks for unnatural heat patterns. But mud is not artificial. Plant matter is not technological. A human moving like flowing water does not create unnatural quantum disturbances." The implications were staggering. The aliens had spent centuries developing sensor technology to counter other technological solutions to stealth. But they had never considered that effective camouflage could be achieved by working with natural systems instead of against them. Do-hyun finished cleaning his face and walked toward the alien observation post. Even now, with most of his camouflage removed, he moved with a fluid grace that seemed to blur the edges of his human form. "Commander Veltar," he said, offering a respectful nod to the crystalline alien. "Your sensors performed exactly as designed. They told you the truth about what was in that forest: organic matter, natural thermal patterns, and life moving according to physical laws." Veltar's chimes were subdued. "But we were looking for you." "You were looking for a human using human technology to hide from alien technology," replied Do-hyun. "But I was not hiding. I was becoming part of the environment you were monitoring. Your sensors saw me constantly. They just interpreted me as part of the forest, because that is exactly what I had become." General Clicksoth stepped forward, his 6 legs clicking on the metal floor. "This technique, how long does it take to master?" "For basic competency? Perhaps 6 months of intensive training," said Do-hyun. "But true mastery takes years of practice and an understanding of natural systems that cannot be programmed into computers." The aliens exchanged glances. The military implications were obvious. If human soldiers could routinely defeat the galaxy's most advanced sensor technology using nothing but mud and vegetation, then every assumption about modern warfare needed to be reconsidered. "There is more," added Dr. Subin. "Captain Do-hyun demonstrated just one application of human adaptive camouflage. Our soldiers can blend into urban environments using artificial materials, underwater environments using different techniques, even zero-gravity environments by understanding how matter behaves in space." Kexandra's crystal form brightened as she began to understand the full scope of what she had witnessed. "You are not just talking about hiding from sensors. You are talking about a completely different approach to stealth operations. We are talking about the difference between using technology to fight the environment and using knowledge to become part of it," confirmed Subin. "Your technology is impressive, but it is still technology. It can be countered by other technology. Natural camouflage based on understanding environmental systems is much harder to defeat because it does not rely on artificial systems that can be detected or jammed. Du Hyun held up the data crystal. This belongs to you, of course. The test was to prove that humans could reach the target undetected. Mission accomplished. But the aliens were no longer thinking about the test. They were thinking about the revolutionary implications of what they had just witnessed. A single human with primitive materials had made their most advanced military technology completely irrelevant. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted, and it had shifted because of mud and leaves applied with the wisdom of human ancestors who had learned to hunt and hide long before the first alien civilization had developed spaceflight. The test was over, but the real learning was just beginning. 3 days after the test, the main conference hall of Proxima Station buzzed with activity unlike anything seen since the formation of the Galactic Defense Coalition. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to witness what many were calling the most significant military demonstration in galactic history. Admiral Rexion of the Luminary Defense Command floated at the head of the conference table, his energy form pulsing with what observers had learned to recognize as deep thought. Around him sat the military leaders of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, all trying to process the implications of what they had witnessed. Ambassador Hyunwoo sat quietly in his chair, still somewhat amazed by how completely the situation had changed. 3 days ago, he had been pleading for Earth's acceptance into the coalition. Now, every alien species in the galaxy wanted to know how human soldiers could become invisible using nothing but mud and vegetation. "The motion before us is simple," announced Admiral Rexion. "Full membership for Earth in the Galactic Defense Coalition with immediate integration into our Special Operations Forces. All in favor?" The vote was unanimous. Not a single alien species opposed Earth's membership. The same beings who had questioned human capabilities 3 days earlier were now eager to learn from human techniques. Captain Lee Do-hyun stood at a presentation podium addressing an audience of the galaxy's finest military minds. His simple Earth uniform looked plain next to the elaborate armor and technological enhancements worn by alien officers. But everyone in the room was listening to his every word. "The key principle," Do-hyun explained, "is to work with your environment instead of against it. Your advanced sensors are designed to detect things that do not belong in natural settings. But if you become part of the natural setting, there is nothing for the sensors to identify as artificial." Commander Veltar raised a crystalline appendage. "But surely this technique only works in natural environments. Urban areas would not provide the same concealment opportunities." Do-hyun smiled. "Urban environments have their own camouflage. Materials, construction debris, weathering patterns, the way shadows fall between buildings. The principle remains the same. Understand your environment so completely that you can become indistinguishable from it." Dr. Han Subin activated a holographic display showing various camouflage techniques. Human military forces have developed adaptive camouflage for every known environment. Desert operations using sand and mineral compounds. Arctic operations using snow and ice formations. Even space operations using debris patterns and electromagnetic backgrounds. The aliens watched in fascination as the display showed human soldiers disappearing into various landscapes using materials that their sensors would register as completely natural. General Clicksoth clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. These techniques could revolutionize reconnaissance operations. But how long would it take to train our soldiers in such methods? "That depends on the species," replied Do-hyun. "Some of your people might adapt quickly to these techniques. Others might find them more challenging. The Chitauri, for example, have excellent natural camouflage instincts from your evolutionary background as hunters. What about the Vorthak? Asked Veltar. Our crystalline structure makes us rather conspicuous in most environments. Dr. Subin considered this. Actually, your ability to modulate your internal resonance might allow for acoustic camouflage techniques that organic species cannot achieve. You could potentially become invisible to sound-based detection systems. The possibilities seemed endless. Each alien species began to understand how their unique biological characteristics might be adapted to new forms of camouflage that their enemies would never expect. There is another factor to consider, added Do-hyun. These techniques require patience and discipline that cannot be programmed into machines. A soldier must be willing to move slowly, to wait for hours in uncomfortable positions, to think like part of the environment instead of like a person with a mission. Admiral Rexion's energy form brightened. You are describing a fundamental change in military thinking. For centuries, we have focused on developing better technology to overcome environmental challenges. You are suggesting that we should instead learn to work with those challenges. Exactly, confirmed Hyunwoo. Human military philosophy has always emphasized adaptability over technological superiority. Sometimes the most advanced solution is not the most effective solution. Field Marshal Kexandra had been quiet throughout most of the discussion, but now she spoke up. I must confess, this demonstration has forced us to reconsider many of our basic assumptions about warfare. We have been preparing to fight enemies who think like us, beings who would use technology to solve technological problems. But humans solve technological problems with knowledge and patience, observed Science Officer Krethon. This makes your soldiers extremely difficult to predict or counter. The discussion continued for hours as alien military leaders tried to understand not just the techniques Do-hyun had demonstrated, but the entire philosophy behind them. They were discovering that effective military operations sometimes required thinking like a primitive hunter rather than an advanced technologist. By the end of the conference, a new training program had been established. Captain Do-hyun would lead a joint task force teaching adaptive camouflage techniques to selected personnel from each coalition species. The program would be based on Proxima Station, making it neutral ground where all species could learn together. One final question, said Admiral Rexion as the formal session concluded. What should we call this new doctrine? Do-hyun thought for a moment. On Earth, we have an old saying, when you cannot change your environment, become your environment. Perhaps we could call it Environmental Integration Protocol. The aliens nodded approvingly. It sounded appropriately technical for a galactic military doctrine, while capturing the essence of what Do-hyun had demonstrated. As representatives began to file out of the conference hall, Ambassador Hyunwoo found himself approached by dozens of alien officers wanting to discuss training opportunities for their personnel. Earth had gone from being a questionable addition to the coalition to being one of its most valuable members in the space of a single demonstration. Later that evening, Do-hyun sat in the station's observation lounge, looking out at the stars and reflecting on how much had changed. Dr. Yoonji joined him, carrying 2 cups of Earth coffee. "Congratulations, Captain," she said, offering him a cup. "You have single-handedly changed galactic military doctrine." Do-hyun sipped his coffee and smiled. "I just did what any human soldier would do. I adapted to the situation and used the tools available to me. Tools that the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy never thought to use," pointed out Yoonji. "Sometimes the oldest tools are still the best tools," replied Do-hyun. "Our ancestors learned to survive by understanding their world completely. We should not forget that wisdom just because we have developed better technology. 6 months later, the first graduates of the Environmental Integration Protocol completed their training. The class included Chithari hunters who could disappear into urban ruins, Vorthak resonance specialists who could become acoustically invisible, and Luminari energy manipulators who could mask themselves as natural electromagnetic phenomena. But perhaps more importantly, a new philosophy had taken root in the Galactic Defense Coalition, the understanding that sometimes the most sophisticated problems required the most basic solutions, and that true military effectiveness came not from having the best technology, but from having the wisdom to know when not to use it. The protocol manuals would eventually fill entire databases, but the core principle could be written in a single sentence that was inscribed above the entrance to the training facility. Adapt to your environment completely, and you will become invisible to those who expect you to fight against it. It was a lesson that would reshape galactic warfare for generations to come, taught by a human who had learned it from mud and leaves in an alien forest.